Harawira.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, tēnā tō katoa te whare. To the Acting Minister of Energy and Resources.
Order, I've called Hone Harawira.
To the Minister, does the survey and drilling arrangement between Government and Petrobras have the prior and informed consent of Te-Whānau-a-Apanui? And if not, will this lack of consent breach the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples?
The Honourable Heke Parata.
Mr. Speaker, no.
Hone Harawira.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister, did the Minister consult with the Māori Party before calling out the New Zealand Armed Forces against Te-Whānau-a-Apanui? Now, what consultation will the Minister engage in with the Māori Party before calling out the armed forces against the tangata whenua of Te Tauihu if they decide to challenge government's decision?
Order, point of order, Roa Flavel.
Can I ask Mr. Speaker the relevance of any questions with respect to the Māori Party? The Minister has no responsibility for the Māori Party and what we do, honourable as it is.
What about the Mana Party?
Order. It's perfectly within the member's right to ask if a minister consulted with the Māori Party. There is some question, though, over the wording of the supplementary the member has asked. I'd ask him to reword his supplementary question to make sure that it is totally within that it links pretty closely to the primary question, but he certainly is entitled to ask whether a minister has consulted with another party. Now, Hone Harawira.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Did the Minister consult with the Māori Party before calling out the New Zealand Armed Forces against Te Whānau-a-Apanui? And what consultation will the Minister engage in with the Māori Party? Should the Minister call out the armed forces against the tangata whenua of Te Tauihu if they decide to challenge government's decision to grant survey and drilling permits to the Chinese-backed Australian mining company Grey Wolf Gold Mining?
The Honourable Heke Parata.
Mr. Speaker, I have no responsibility for the operational arrangements of the New Zealand Police.
Hone Harawira.
To the Minister, does the Minister know that calling out the New Zealand Armed Forces against Tūhoe and Te Whānau-a-Apanui has seriously undermined the relationship between Māori and the government's coalition partners in the Māori Party? And what formal protest was lodged by the Māori Party about the government's actions being in breach of the coalition agreement, which states that the relationship between the Māori Party and the National Party will be one of good faith and no surprises?
No, order. That question is not within standing orders. I don't see any ministerial responsibility in any part of that question. I don't. It's the members only. If he can bring a question within standing orders, I'm prepared to allow him to ask one. But it is his last question. Hone Harawira.
Mr. Speaker.
No, he's already done it. He's already quit.
Can the Minister advise whether any formal protest was lodged with the Minister by the Māori Party about the government's actions in calling out the New Zealand Armed Forces against Te Whānau-a-Apanui being in breach of the coalition agreement, which states that the relationship between the Māori Party and the National Party will be one of good faith and no surprises?
The Honourable Heke Parata.
Mr. Speaker, as I answered before, I have no operational responsibility in energy and resources for those operational decisions.
The question asked whether the Māori Party had protested to the Minister about something that had taken place.
Thank you.
Order. I mean, I'll hear the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, the question is set down to the Acting Minister of Energy and Resources. The question was about Defence Force and their involvement. How can the Minister of Energy and Resources have any responsibility for the Defence Force?
But I don't think I need further help. The final question asked, though, simply asked whether the Māori Party had protested to this minister. And it's pretty easy to answer that. They either have or they hadn't. And it didn't actually, the focus of the question wasn't the details of who called out either the police or Defence Forces. It was simply whether or not this minister had received protest from anyone, and that seems not unreasonable. And it may be she didn't receive any protest at all. But anyway, it's not a difficult question to answer, I'd have thought. And it doesn't need to involve any answering with respect to police or Defence Forces. The Honourable Heke Parata.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Heke Parata.
But the question was a protest about specific activities for which I have no responsibility. So why would a protest be being made to me about matters outside my portfolio?
Speaking to that point of order.
I'll hear the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Speaker, it's absolutely appropriate when the Minister is the Minister generally responsible for these mining and drilling issues for the Maori Party to approach her about the government's approach in these matters.
This is not actually a matter of, well, it's verging. It's an interesting issue. The Minister actually raises a reasonable point that while I'd argued that she should answer with respect to whether or not a party had protested to her, if it was about nothing to do with her responsibilities, then I think it is a valid point that she really is not answerable for that. And I think I do have to accept the point that the Honourable Minister's made because ministers are only answerable for issues that they have ministerial responsibility for. And the Minister can't be asked whether some other member or party has protested to her about something she has no responsibility for. And certainly as I think the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith pointed out, and the Minister herself pointed out, that whoever was called out in this particular event was nothing to do with the Acting Minister of Energy and Resources. And I've got to accept, I think, that the Minister's point of order is a fair and reasonable point of order, and I think I am in error in suggesting that she should have answered the question. I accept her point that, in fact, she has no ministerial responsibility. I'll hear the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, and I do want to disagree with the ruling that you have just made, and I know that I'm sort of treading on some tight ground here. But, Mr. Speaker, the Minister does have, under the delegated arrangements, responsibility for the permitting, the drilling, the supervision. It would be entirely proper for the Minister of Defence to consult with her about the arrangements around the security for that. It would be entirely proper for the Commissioner of Police to consult with her around the security for that. Mr. Speaker, it is also entirely proper for the arrangements around the security for that to be the subject of a protest from any Member of Parliament to her. They can if they want to. If she could send them away and say, it's none of my business, but they could still approach her.
The member made some good points there. I think he's correct that the Minister could have been asked whether certain ministers who were responsible for those actions perhaps consulted with her, but that's not what this question asked. This question asked specifically whether anyone had protested the Minister about the calling out of either police or defence forces. I'm not sure who was involved. And I think that's where the question erred. If the question had been rather more along the lines that the member has suggested in the first part of his point of order, I think I would have been more insisting on the Minister answering it. But I do accept the point of order the Minister made that I cannot ask a Minister to answer a matter where she has no ministerial responsibility for whether those authorities were called out in this instance, and I have to accept that. I think it would be inappropriate for me as Speaker to do otherwise. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard. Can
I suggest on the basis that both you and I originally thought that the original supplementary question was an answer, for you to let Mr. Harawira have another crack where he could ask whether the Minister was advised that the Maori Party had protested.
Nice try, but I think I was pretty generous to Mr. Harawira. I invited him to reword his question, and I think I've been reasonable. And no, hang on. I believe I've been reasonable on this, and I accept unreservedly the point of order made by the Minister. And I think I'd be erring if I did not do that. And I think that's where the matter should lie today. And that brings to a close questions for oral answer. Would some honourable member care to move the House take note of miscellaneous business?